104 firefighters ran towards a burning warehouse in Tianjin. Then the warehouse went up with the force of 21 tons of explosive. Most of them never came back. That is number 13, a bus that left a Beijing terminus in 1995 and turned up in a reservoir, a lake that has been taking ships for 80 years. A tomb China opened once and never dared open another. If you were here for the first 13, I have not reused a single one. 13 places, and locals refuse to go near one after dark. Number 13, August 12, 2015. Just before midnight in the port district of Tianjin, a warehouse catches fire. Firefighters arrive within minutes. Nobody on the ground knows what is stacked inside. Ammonium nitrate, potassium nitrate, and roughly 700 tons of sodium cyanide in a building licensed to hold 10. Then it goes. The first blast takes out the crews closest in. 30 seconds later, the second one lands, about 21 tons of explosive. Seismic instruments logged it as an earthquake. 173 people died. 104 of them were firefighters. 300 buildings gone. 12,000 cars burned where they were parked, in rows, waiting to be shipped. I have looked at those photographs more than I needed to. The number I keep going back to is the 700 tons, because the permitted limit was 10. And after the fire, more than 300 tons of that cyanide could not be accounted for at all. Hold on to that gap. It comes back 3 more times, and it is the reason I made this list. Everyone inside a 2-mile radius, about 3 kilometers, was moved out. Some of those apartment towers still stand with every window gone. Close enough that people drive past them to work. Far enough that nobody walks there in the evening. The next one is not a disaster. It is a bus route. And in Beijing, people still argue about it 30 years on. Number 12, November 14th, 1995. The last bus of the night pulls out of the terminus by the Old Summer Palace in Beijing, heading for the Fragrant Hills. A driver, a conductor, a few passengers. At one stop, 3 men get on in long old-fashioned robes. Nobody says anything. It is late and people mind their own business. Then an old woman starts a fight. She grabs a young man by the arm, screams that he stole her wallet, and hauls him off at the next stop. On the pavement, with the bus gone, she lets go. She never lost a wallet. She had been watching those 3 men since they got on. And when she looked at the floor, they had no legs. The bus never reached the depot. 2 days later, it was found in a reservoir 60 miles off its route. 3 bodies inside. That detail about the floor is the one that got me, and I am not proud of that. Let me be exact about what is real. There is no police record. No newspaper ran it. In half the versions, the bus is not the 375 at all. It is the 302 or the 330. Nothing survives being checked. So why has it outlasted everything? The route is real. The terminus is real. And in 1995, there really was a last bus down that road in the dark. I think that is the whole trick. The best ghost stories do not ask you to believe in ghosts. They ask you to get on a bus. If this is the China you want more of, subscribe. I am the only one making these. The next place is a village of 1,000 people, with a second village underneath it. Number 11, in Shanxi province, there is an ordinary farming village on a hill. Old houses, a temple, a stage for opera. About 1,000 people live there. And directly under their feet, under the vegetable plots in the courtyards, runs a fortress on 3 levels. Roughly 6 miles of tunnel, about 10 kilometers, cut around 1,400 years ago. Guard posts, grain stores, stables, underground for horses. Wells reaching the same water the village drinks. And traps. Sudden vertical drops built into the passages. Take one wrong step in the dark, and you walk into open air. I went in expecting a cellar. It is a barracks. You can walk part of it today. The restored section drops about 85 feet, roughly 26 meters. In places, the ceiling gets low enough that you go through bent over. I would last about 4 minutes down there. Here is what I find hard to shake. It was built during one of the most violent stretches of Chinese history by people certain an army was coming. They dug for years. They thought of everything, down to where the horses would stand. And the attack never came. All of it still waiting under a village that just grew old on top. From a place built to hide 1,000 people to a place 100,000 people simply walked away from. Number 10. Picture a 6-story apartment block in the Gobi Desert with every window gone. Not broken. Gone, frames and all. Wallpaper still on the walls, peeling in the wind off the desert. This is Yumen in Gansu, the birthplace of the Chinese oil industry. The first well went in here in 1939. For 50 years, it was a boomtown. Well over 100,000 people at its height, and proud of it. Schools, cinemas, a hospital, all built out of a hole in the ground. Then the oil ran out. Production fell through the 90s, and in 2003, the city government did something I still find extraordinary. It moved. The entire administration relocated about 60 miles away, roughly 95 kilometers, to a new Yumen, and left the old one standing. Fewer than 20,000 people are left. Most are oil veterans who would not go. They live in a few occupied blocks surrounded by empty ones, and at night, the lit windows are outnumbered by hundreds of dark ones. That is the thing about Yumen. It is not abandoned. It is being left in real time with the last people watching from inside. I find that harder to look at than any ruin. Number 9 is a stretch of water about the same size as a small country. It has been swallowing ships since before the war ended. Number 9. April 16th, 1945. A Japanese transport ship crosses Poyang Lake, the largest freshwater lake in China, loaded with more than 200 soldiers. It reaches a stretch of water near a small temple called Laoye Miao. The weather turns in minutes, and the ship goes down so fast that almost nobody gets off it. A year later, with the war over, an American salvage diver was brought in to find it. His team worked that patch of lake for months. They never recovered the ship, and some of the divers did not come back up. That is the line in the story I keep rereading. Since then, the stretch has collected a reputation and a body count nobody has ever totaled. Fishing boats, cargo boats, small craft, all lost in water that on a calm day looks like a wide gray field. The stories that grew out of this go a long way. Lights under the surface, a vortex, a monster. Those are ghost stories with a lake attached, and I would not put money on one of them. The sober version is worse because you cannot argue with it. This is where a huge river system meets a huge shallow lake. The channel narrows, the wind funnels down it. Sandbars move from season to season. Calm water turns into a short, violent swell faster than you can react. And a loaded boat that would be fine anywhere else is not fine here. The fishermen do not go into the theory. They cross by day and they arrange their lives so they are not out there at night. I would take their version over mine. The next place was opened once by people who meant well, and it turned into the biggest mistake in Chinese archaeology. Number 8. In 1956, a team of archaeologists broke into the tomb of the Wanli Emperor north of Beijing and found it completely intact. Nobody had been inside for more than 300 years. 3 coffins, thousands of objects, bolts of imperial silk, folded, still colored. And then the air got in. The team had nothing to preserve any of it with, and I do not think they understood that until it started. No climate control, no conservation plan for organic materials sealed since 1620. The silks darkened and went brittle within hours. Wood warped. A large part of what they had just found came apart while they were standing there looking at it. Then it got worse. 10 years later, during the Cultural Revolution, Red Guards came to the site. They dragged the remains of the emperor and his 2 empresses out to the front of the tomb. They denounced them, then they burned them. The scholar who pushed hardest for the dig had become a target himself by then, and he died in prison in 1969. If you asked me which of these 13 I would undo, it is this one. Not because it is the most frightening, because it is the only one where someone with good intentions caused the loss. And it changed the country's policy permanently. Since Dingling, China has not approved the opening of a single imperial tomb. If you watch the first list, you will remember the first emperor's mound, sealed and refused to everybody alive. This is the reason. They opened one once and watched it turn to dust in their hands. Right, I am going to give you somewhere to breathe. Number 7. Everything else on this list is here because of what happened to people. This one is not. Nobody died here. I am putting it in anyway. It is the strangest, beautiful thing in the country, and after Dingling, you have earned a few minutes that are not about a body. In 1975, work started on a dam on the Luan River in Hebei. By the end of 1984, the reservoir was full, and under that water went a pass in the Great Wall of China. Not a copy. 500-year-old wall, a fortress gate, and the watchtowers on both sides. Drowned on purpose because the city's downstream needed water. At its highest, only the tops of the ridge towers break the surface like stone islands in a line. Underneath, divers drop about 100 feet, roughly 30 meters, into cold black water and swim along battlements. The wall sits under several meters of silt. You find it by touch as much as by sight. I have watched that footage more than once, and it never stops being strange. And here is the detail that ties this whole video together. The two cities that reservoir supplies are Tianjin and Tangshan. You have met one already. You will meet the other before the end. And when you do, you will understand why this country was willing to drown a wall to keep those two places in water. Break over. Number 6 is a hole in the ground that nobody has ever explained. Number 6. In 1992, farmers in a Zhejiang village decided to drain a pond. It was not a pond, it was a shaft. The water went down and kept going down, and underneath was a room. By the time they finished, there were 24. Man-made caverns cut into sandstone. Some over 100 feet across, about 34 meters. Ceilings up to 60 feet high. Stone pillars left to hold the roofs. Sloping walls. Staircases. Every surface, floor to ceiling, carries the same chisel marks. Parallel bands, each about 2 feet wide, all cut at the same angle. Across every cavern. Whoever did this was following one instruction, precisely, for a very long time. I find that more unsettling than any ghost on this list. The estimate for the rock removed is around 1 million cubic meters, a mountain's worth of stone carried out by hand and put somewhere. Nobody has found where. And there is not one line about it anywhere. No record of the order. No record of who paid. No record of the dead. This is a civilization that wrote down harvests, taxes, and eclipses. 24 enormous rooms, and nobody made a note. That is what gets me, not the how. The silence. Number 5 is a place where the number is known exactly because it took 10 days to count it. Number 5. April 26, 1942. In Liaoning, in the northeast, a coal mine is running at full output under Japanese administration, worked by Chinese laborers. Underground, gas and coal dust find an ignition source. The blast comes up the shaft. Flame out of the mouth of the mine, in daylight, in front of the families waiting outside. Then comes the decision. To starve the fire of oxygen, the administrators shut off the ventilation to the mine. Down below, there are 1,518 Chinese workers and 31 Japanese staff. Cutting the air stops the fire. It also stops everything else. It took 10 days to bring the bodies up, 1,549 of them. It is still, more than 80 years later, the deadliest accident in the history of mining anywhere on Earth. And there is the threat again. That figure did not come out at the time. The occupying administration had no interest in publishing it. The families at the fence were told very little. The full count is something the world settled on afterwards, from records and from the men who dug. Somebody always knows the number first. It is almost never the people standing at the gate. Number 4 was also dug by hand, in secret, and the men who dug it were forbidden to tell their own families where they worked. Number 4. In 1966, 60,000 soldiers arrived at a mountain outside Fuling in Chongqing and began hollowing it out. Not tunneling through it. Hollowing it. Halls the height of an office block, roads wide enough for trucks, miles of passage inside solid rock. It is the largest man-made cave system on the planet. What it was for was a nuclear reactor, a complete plutonium plant buried under a mountain, deep enough to survive the war everyone assumed was coming. They worked on it for 17 years. 107 of them died doing it. 76 were formally recognized as martyrs, and the average age of those men was 21. I had to check that number twice. The soldiers were not allowed to say where they were. Not to wives, not to parents. Some spent the best years of their lives inside a mountain that officially did not exist. Then they went home and could not explain the gap. Then the policy changed, and in the early 1980s, it was simply stopped. The plant never produced anything, not 1 gram. It was declassified in 2002 and opened to visitors in 2010. So you can walk through a reactor hall the size of a cathedral inside a mountain that was never switched on. 21 years old, average. That is the part I cannot leave alone. Number 3 is a city of 1 million people, and it had 23 seconds. Number 3, July 28, 1976, 22 minutes to 4 in the morning. An industrial city of about 1 million people is asleep. A fault runs directly under it and nobody knows the fault is there. 23 seconds, that is the whole event. In 23 seconds, most of Tangshan stops being a city. The housing was brick and unreinforced. It came down on the people inside it while they slept. The official figure is 242,000 dead. The first number that went out was 655,000. It was revised down later, and historians still argue the real total sits well above the official one. And the country did not tell its own public or the world for 3 years. There it is a third time, the gap between what happened and what was said, and how long the gap lasted. If you saw the first list, you know how China handled a destroyed town in 2008. It fenced it, preserved it, and locked it at dusk. In 1976, it did the exact opposite. Tangshan was rebuilt on the same ground in about 7 years to strict new earthquake codes. Today, it is one of the richest cities in its province. So there is no ruin to visit, and that is exactly why it belongs here. Streets, shops, traffic lights, and a memorial wall with names on it. Underneath all of it is the ground that took 250,000 people in under half a minute. People live on it. They just do not talk about the middle of the night. I think that is the bravest thing on this list, and the most unsettling. Before number 1, do me a favor and hit the like button. I am building this from nothing, and it helps more than it looks like it should. Number 2 is a set of buildings outside Harbin, and I am going to be careful with it. Number 2. On the edge of Harbin in the far northeast, there is a district called Pingfang. It looks like the outskirts of any Chinese industrial city. Low buildings, a road, apartment blocks. In the middle of it stands a long brick building with square windows and a plain front. Between 1935 and 1945, that was the headquarters of Unit 731, a Japanese army facility that carried out human experimentation on prisoners and built biological weapons meant for cities and farmland. I am not going to walk you through what happened inside. It is documented, it is available, and I have read enough of it. Putting the detail in a countdown would make it entertainment, and I am not doing that. What I will tell you is what is there now, because that is the part people do not know. In 1945, as the Soviet advance came, the unit destroyed its own site. They dynamited the main buildings and burned the records. They tried to erase 10 years in a matter of days. They did not manage it. Foundations stayed, some structures survived. And for decades afterwards, Ordinary families lived in the streets around those ruins, in a district the world had gone quiet about. Today there's a museum and a long black memorial hall that opened in 2015, built low into the ground. Excavation there is still going on. They are still finding the outline of what was dynamited. Locals do not avoid Pingfang, they live there. But go at closing time, when the tour groups have gone and the light drops behind that low black building. You will not find anyone lingering in the car park. Number 1. August 1975. Typhoon. Nina stalls over Henan province and stops moving. It rains for 3 days. In one day, some places take more rain than they normally get in a year. I did not know any of this existed until I started researching this channel, and that still bothers me. Behind the Banqiao Dam, the water rises past every level anyone planned for. Sluice gates are partly silted. Requests to open them tangle in the chain of command. And at around 1 in the morning on August 8th, with the villages below asleep, the dam fails. The wave that comes out is several meters high and miles wide, moving down a flat plain in the dark. It does not stop at Banqiao. It takes the next dam and the next. 62 dams fail in a chain that night. 26,000 people drowned in the flood itself. Then the water sat on the land. Around 145,000 more died afterwards, of disease and hunger, in the weeks it took help to arrive. Unofficial estimates run as high as 230,000. 10 million people were affected, across roughly 4,600 square miles. And this is the payoff of the thing I have been pointing at all list. You have very likely never heard of it. The scale did not reach the Chinese public until the 90s. The official documents were not declassified until 2005. 30 years, the dam is there now, rebuilt, bigger, sitting in green farmland with fishermen on the bank. It is the most ordinary-looking place in this entire video, and I think that is why it is number 1. The people living below it have always known what happened here. Everyone else needed 30 years to be told. Here is what struck me putting this list together. Almost none of these places are dangerous. You could stand in most of them tomorrow afternoon and be perfectly safe. What they hold is not a threat. It is a delay. A gap between the moment something happened and the moment anyone was allowed to say so. Some of those gaps are longer than a childhood. That is what people mean when they will not go somewhere after dark. Not that the place will hurt them, that standing in it makes the delay feel like it is still running. So here's my question for you. What happened where you live that took years to come out? Tell me below. Thanks for watching. Sleep well.